Just avoid the center of the map. Okay, but seriously, if you really want a quick guide for surviving as a solo player in Echoes, then you've come to the right place. This video is going to be focusing mostly on surviving as a solo herbivore, as I have the most experience with these. But in future, I might also make a dedicated guide for the carnivores. I'll be covering general tips and tricks that'll help you avoid dying, but I'll also try and go into more depth for each playable. While I joked at the start about avoiding the center of the map, there is actually some truth to that idea. Where you spend the majority of your time can greatly influence how likely it is you'll encounter other players, both friendly and hostile, as well as affecting how easily you can spot other players. In general, the center of the map is where you'll most often run into carnivores, especially Smilodon. Besides that, you might also want to be cautious when in areas like Whipsnake Creek, Buffalo Swamp, or Pineland Pond. I will point out that even in safer areas, you still shouldn't completely lower your guard. There's always a chance that somebody could ambush you wherever you are. It's for that reason that I also feel the visibility of certain areas of the map matters. In particular, places like the Sage Chaparral Scrubland or parts of the hillside prairie and pine woodlands can make for excellent ambush spots for Smilodon and wolves alike. If you need to travel through these areas, try to keep moving or else pay close attention to any suspicious details, such as fleeing AI which you didn't startle yourself, randomly rattling snakes, or rustling leaves, though this last tip only works against carnivores who forget to crouch. When grazing or resting, I recommend finding a spot as far away from dense cover as possible. This doesn't necessarily mean that you yourself can't use cover to hide, just make sure that this cover is isolated enough from other patches of cover so any approaching predators will have a harder time sneaking up towards you. Now, it's all well and good trying to avoid predators as much as possible, but sooner or later you'll encounter one anyways. Whether it be the odd overconfident lone wolf or a gigantic group of Smilodon, it's best to know what you can do to give yourself the best shot at surviving against these varying threats. Run away. One of the biggest mistakes I've seen horse players make is trying to fight back. Whether they'll be alone or even in a herd, choosing to fight back can easily change what could have been a successful escape into an untimely demise. The western horse is one of the fastest animals in the game with incredible stamina, especially when you activate your flee mode. Even wolves will have a hard time keeping up with you when you're using flee mode. It is important to actually activate flee mode when running from wolves, as not using it greatly increases the chances that they'll catch up to you. Alternatively, if you're being attacked by just one or two wolves, you could try and fight back. You still have quite an advantage, but don't be fooled. A good wolf can definitely kill a lone horse with patience, so know your own capabilities and choose your options carefully. As for Smilodon, yeah, just run. They're not exactly marathon runners. As the only animal in-game with stat differences between the males and females, there will be some important differences you'll want to know when facing off with predators as a bison. Against wolves, you'll usually want to fight back, though do know that a large pack of wolves will usually spell doom for you whether you choose to run or fight back. You can try to run if you're using the female bison, but you'll want a very big head start and a place you can use to hide. I especially wouldn't recommend using flee mode, as if the wolves do find where you're hiding, you'll have to fight back. As a male bison, running is just not an option against wolves. The best you can do is run a short distance to a spot that might be better for fighting back. Of course, you do at least have the luxury of being able to one-shot wolves that have provoked you. You could, for instance, use rocks to force wolves to approach you from head-on, or stand in water too deep for wolves to run to give yourself an advantage. If you're really desperate, you could use tar to trap any wolves that you buck off, but I personally don't like to since I think it's a bit unfair. Against Smilodon, your options are much more clear. Both male and female bison can successfully escape Smilodon in a chase if you spot them early enough and activate flee mode. The male bison does get slightly outsped by Smilodon, which is why it's important to have enough distance between you and the Smilodon so that you can outrun them using your superior stamina. You could also try and fight back if it's just one or two Smilodon. Bison is definitely not a slouch when it comes to standing your ground, but remember that while most Smilodon players probably won't be able to easily kill you with the neck pounds, there are definitely some that can. I'd strongly advise running away if you feel that your reaction time is not up to par. Even if you escape from predators, it's a good idea to remain on your guard, as it's not uncommon for carnivore players to successfully trail behind a herbivore for quite some time. You can try and avoid this by traveling downwind if you think a predator is behind you to make your scent harder to track, though this won't stop more experienced players. In general, staying downwind of where you think predators might approach you from is still a good idea, as your scent is less likely to be spotted from a distance while you'll be able to spot theirs. In order for a Smilodon to land a killing pounce on you, they'll need to lash onto your front left shoulder from your perspective. It's a good idea to try and turn your body to face away from where you think a Smilodon might try to approach you from to minimize the chances of getting killed from a pounce. You can often tell if a predator is nearby but not hunting you by the sounds of their broadcast calls. Carnivores will automatically call out whenever they're marking or maintaining their territory, so this can be a good tell if you happen to be nearby a predator. This usually also means that they're not actively hunting you yet, so best to get moving before they realize. When moving between areas, you might be tempted to canter or even sprint a lot. Just remember to try and keep your stamina above at least half, if not more so that you'll have enough to escape or fight back should you get ambushed. I honestly wouldn't recommend sprinting if you're just trying to get between areas. The speed increase is just not worth the added stamina cost. It might be a good idea to visit a mineral lick. These look like greyish puddles on the ground and are found in various locations around the map. Drinking from them will give you a buff that reduces how quickly you get hungry. This might not sound like a big deal, after all food is practically everywhere as a herbivore, but needing to spend less time eating means that you can spend more time being alert or keeping on the move. Lastly, I want to briefly touch on migration zones. These are areas of the map which when you enter will give you tracks over time. Sounds great, right? Well, they also happen to attract a lot of predators, especially since many carnivore players have also tried switching off to a herbivore to see where a migration zone is, so that they can easily catch players. While it's up to you on how much you're willing to risk getting killed in exchange for tracks, I personally choose to avoid migration zones that spawn in the center of the map, especially as a bison. If the migration zone has a small area which is cut off from the rest of the migration zone by a cliff or rocks, then this could also be a safer way to get tracks from a migration zone. To close off this video, I do just want to add one last thing. This guide is aimed towards players who want to live as long as possible. If you want to, say, gain tracks as quickly as possible, then for instance you might want to visit areas with unique plants, and especially go to as many migration zones as possible. If you are instead looking to have a load of fun and think that avoiding the center of the map is too boring, then go ahead. I'm not here to stop you or anything. Ultimately, this is a game, do what you want, just please don't complain in chat when you die to a Smilodon because you tried fighting back as a horse.